What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, September 21st, 2020, start of a brand new week. And as is usual, we're going to be doing news until we run out of news. Then we'll open the phone lines for your comments, questions, opinions, and observations. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. Let's get right on into it. We do have a lot to talk about today. And obviously, the big story here is that Friday, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away from pancreatic cancer. And the Democratic tantrums are already up there. They're just rolling around on the floors and kicking and screaming that Trump should not be allowed to appoint a new Supreme Court justice. But he's going to do that. He says it will be a woman. The short list is down to 5, and he's going to make the announcement Friday or Saturday following the funeral service for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And of course, the Democrats are out there trying to find some way to block it. They're even talking about impeaching the president again to try and tie the Senate up to hold off confirmation until Joe Biden can steal the election here. But Trump is saying that we have this obligation without delay. He's basically doing what the Constitution says. He is the president, and he was elected president for 4 years, not 3.5. And he gets to nominate Supreme Court justices right up until his last day in office here. Now, a lot of people are trying to make a big deal over the fact that supposedly Ruth Bader Ginsburg told one of her granddaughters, only one, that her dying wish was that they would hold off replacing her until after the election. There is no confirmation that this really did happen. Trump is out there saying that this was probably written by Pelosi and Schiff and Schumer. It does seem rather an odd statement because of all people, Ginsburg would know that her last wishes have absolutely no bearing on the operation of the government. But Trump says he's going to do the nominee Friday or Saturday after Ginsburg's funeral. And the corporate media and a lot of other people are saying that more than likely it's going to be Judge Amy Coney Barrett. And her name has popped up each time President Trump is to pick a new Supreme Court nominee. And she's been on Trump's list of nominees since 2017. So a lot of people are looking at her. And of course, she's going to be in for an absolute drubbing. They're going to find some way to drag her through the mud. Unlike Kavanaugh, they're not going to be able to say that she was harassing women in her office or something like that. Or maybe they will, who knows. But it's going to be a heck of a fight. And I hope she's a strong lady because whoever the nominee is, they're going to get punished. They're probably going to wind up feeling like a baby seal. They're going to get clubbed so hard. And what's really interesting, though, is back in 2016 when it was Obama trying to fill a Supreme Court seat, the Democrats and the Republicans had exactly 180-degree separate views of whether it should go forward or not. So all of their past comments are coming back to haunt them here. Now, appearing on Fox and Friends, Mark Levin blasted Democrats hoping to stall the filling of the Supreme Court vacancy left by the death of Ginsburg. Levin said it's a very strange thing, this Democrat Party. First of all, they hate the Constitution because they've spent the last several months pulling out statues of the founders and saying the Constitution was adopted by slaveholders. Then they wave it around to justify the destruction of the Constitution. And what the Democrats want to do is sabotage the entire process. Now, we don't take an oath to the Democrat Party. We don't take an oath to Chuck Schumer. We didn't take an oath to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, God bless her, one of the most left-wing political activist justices in American history, which is why the left is freaking out. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is threatening to pack the Supreme Court in response to McConnell and Trump being in violation of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's wish. Again, whatever Ginsburg's last wish was, if indeed she said that, it's got no bearing on constitutional process, okay? And, of course, the Democrats have been talking about packing the Supreme Court long before Ginsburg passed away. They want to basically increase the number of judges to 12 and then load it up with liberals on the assumption that Biden is going to be the president and that the Senate will come under Democratic control in this election. And they want to load it up with more liberals to counteract all the conservative judges that are there. But they're looking that if Trump nominates a conservative, which he will, and if the Senate confirms, which McConnell seems to think is going to happen, then it's going to be a 3-6 balance on the court with a clear conservative majority. And this is also going to have a bearing on the election itself, because we know the election is going to be contested, and we know everybody's going to be filing lawsuits. There's something like 245 lawsuits have already been filed at the state level for various issues about how we're going to count the votes and when the votes can come in. And I understand over in Pennsylvania, they've got a decision now that votes must be accepted, even if the signature on the vote doesn't match that on the registration. You want to talk about opening the door to vote fraud there. So Ocasio-Cortez is threatening the Democrats should consider packing the Supreme Court if Republicans move to fill the seat vacated by Ginsburg. Now, the Democrats are bringing dishonor to Ginsburg, who said packing the court is undemocratic. And a lot of people have spoken out against packing the Supreme Court because once started, who knows where it could end. We could wind up with a Supreme Court with 1,000 judges on it. And that would make it, virtually impossible to get anything through there. All righty. Now, Senator Lamar Alexander says he supports Trump and the Senate efforts to fill the Supreme Court vacancy, and he blasts the Democrats. Jim Jordan is out there commenting that the Democrats are criticizing Trump for following the Constitution, which is exactly what he's doing. The Constitution says the president will choose the nominee for the Supreme Court. The Senate gives its permission in the confirmation hearing. End of story. That's it. Okay, there's nothing in there that says it can't be done in an election year, and it's been done in an election year many times before. The Democrats out there saying there isn't enough time before the election. That's not true. We've had Supreme Court justices confirmed in as little as 19 days. Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself was confirmed in just 42 days, and it's 43 days to the election. Now, a lot of people are worried what happens if there's no Supreme Court confirmation between now and the aftermath of the election, when all these lawsuits are going to be floating around. It's going to be just like back in 2000, and some of them are going to wind up at the Supreme Court. And if Chief Justice Roberts votes with the conservatives, then you could basically wind up with a tie vote at the Supreme Court, at which point the election could be thrown into the House of Representatives, who would hand the presidency to Biden. But back in 1956, President Eisenhower filled a Supreme Court seat by recess appointment 1 month before the 1956 election, and Trump could and should do exactly the same if the Democrats succeed in blocking his nominee to the Supreme Court. Democrats are actually out there threatening more arson and riots if Trump tries to replace Ginsburg. And it's almost like blackmailing with civil war, threatening to burn it all down over the Supreme Court pick. The leftists are out there just freaking out and throwing tantrums. Immediately after news broke of the death of Ginsburg, pardon me, some verified Twitter users threatened arson and apparent violence to prevent Republicans from replacing her before the elections. Biden is out there saying that if he wins the election, Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court should be withdrawn. Not the way it works. Trump is president until the end of next January. So, all righty. Apparently, a far-left DC Marxist group caught on video training supporters on how to kick in Lindsey Graham's door. The protest was planned for today. I haven't heard if it's gone forward or what the result of that was. The Democrats are pledging ongoing protests over the Ginsburg replacement. They target Mitch McConnell's homes in Washington, D.C. and Kentucky. Now, the mob is planning to intimidate McConnell in the wake of Ginsburg's death. His home address was posted online. He's been doxxed. Okay? So, the whole new dimension to the election. It's no longer about the economy. It's no longer about the coronavirus. It's all about the Supreme Court and what kind of a court the American voters want for the next 10 to 20 years. All righty. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, again, is telling her followers to fight from the streets to block the Supreme Court nomination. And let's see, the announcement of the death of Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg sent shockwaves through the nation, primarily because her passing opens up the opportunity for President Trump to appoint an unprecedented third judge to the High Court in his first term. It's never happened before, where a president has appointed 3 Supreme Court justices in a single term. Now, Democratic senators, including Chuck Schumer, threatened that nothing is off the table if Republicans try and hold a vote on a new Supreme Court justice before the election. Ocasio-Cortez is out there saying we must consider impeaching Trump and Barr to stop the Supreme Court nomination. So Cortez said during a press conference on Sunday, Democrats must be open to all options in their attempt to stop Donald Trump and the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell from filling the Supreme Court seat that was vacated Friday. All right, Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi addressed on Sunday the possibility of impeaching President Trump as part of a ploy to stop him from filling a recently vacated Supreme Court seat, saying that Democrats, quote, have arrows in our quiver. Apparently, the Democratic leadership had a conference call on Saturday to discuss strategies to stop. They are really, really scared. If Trump gets a new conservative Supreme Court justice, it's going to be 6-3 conservatives. And the liberals are just freaking out about that because they've been used to a Supreme Court that was very pro-LGBTQ. We saw that ridiculous law that just got passed in California where they're reducing the penalty for statutory rape in the case of gay sex. I think violates the Equal Protection Clause, but that's just me here. So Schumer is saying nothing is off the table if Republicans move forward with the nomination. And he said, let me be clear, if Leader McConnell and the Senate Republicans move forward with this, then nothing is off the table for next year. Nothing is off the table. Sounds like terroristic threatening to me. Now, a poll was taken. It shows a majority of Americans support filling the Supreme Court vacancy during an election year. Apparently, this poll was taken just days before Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. So the polls are definitely on Trump and McConnell's side here. Ted Cruz argues in favor of filling the Supreme Court vacancy, warns of a potential election dispute. Yeah, that's definitely going to happen here. And says America could face a deep crisis if President Trump does not act to fill the Supreme Court vacancy created by the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So the court can be at full strength by Election Day. Cruz said he would not accept the Supreme Court nomination. I want to be in the political fight. Well, it's a moot point because Trump has already announced that his list of 5 nominees are all women. Okay, as I mentioned a little earlier, Joe Biden is calling for Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee to be withdrawn if he loses the election in November. So Joe Biden appealed to Senate Republicans Sunday not to allow Trump to jam through a Supreme Court pick and said if he himself wins in November, it should be he who gets to make the selection. No, Joe, you get to make the selection after next January 21st when you take office. All righty. Now, Joe Biden's hypocrisy from 2016 is coming back to haunt him when he railed on Republicans for holding up a Supreme Court appointment, saying that it is the constitutional duty of a president to nominate if a vacancy becomes available. Yes, he was absolutely correct back in 2016. So his words have come back to haunt him this week after he slammed Donald Trump for nominating a candidate to fill the vacancy left by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Biden said the nomination should wait until the election in 43 days. Trump lashed back at Biden Saturday night, calling on him to release his own list of potential nominees and accusing him of being afraid to ward off voters by releasing names before the 3rd of November. And a lot of people are thinking that's exactly the problem, that Biden's list of Supreme Court nominees would scare the heck out of the voters, who are, I think, getting a little tired of liberalism, especially as our cities go up in flames. Biden is trying to defend keeping his list secret, saying that it would influence the person's decision-making. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden provided 3 reasons on Sunday for why he will not release his own list of potential Supreme Court nominees and why he says he's against the practice at all, including the possibility that releasing a list could potentially affect a candidate judge's decision-making. All righty. Interesting little article. This is from Russia Today. The no-holds-barred battle for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Supreme Court seat will be the final nail in the coffin of America's democracy. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death set in motion a battle for the future of the Supreme Court, the rule of law, and the concept of an independent judiciary. It will be a battle without a victor, and American democracy will be the loser. I certainly agree on that one here. All righty, getting on to the general election in politics. Trump is gaining momentum in Florida. He's ahead of Biden in Texas. Perception that President Trump is better at managing the economy than Democratic challenger Biden helped him gain momentum in the key swing states. The latest battleground tracker poll from CBS shows Trump has cut into Biden's lead among likely voters in Florida, while increasing his advantage over his challenger in the toss-up state of Texas. The poll shows the economy at front and center among voters, despite the devastating blows COVID-19 has delivered to those states. You know, there's another aspect we need to look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The fact that the Supreme Court is now a factor in this upcoming election may, in fact, draw more Trump voters off of their couches and out to the voting booths, because Trump's picks for the Supreme Court were a major factor in people voting for him back in 2016. And so this may actually work to his advantage here. Okay, the Democratic Party today tried to minimize the risks of possible election fraud. However, Joe Biden spent decades of his career sounding the alarm about it. Now today he's saying it's just a myth. Now, Tulsi Gabbard goes off message from the Democrats again and introduces a bipartisan bill to deter fraud with mail-in ballots. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, who was branded a Russian asset by Hillary Clinton for her anti-war views, is again refusing to blindly follow her party's talking points, this time over fears of election fraud. Whether in the midst of a pandemic as we are now, where mail-in voting is likely to drastically increase, or even a normal election, no one should get in between a voter and the ballot box, the Hawaii congressman said Friday on Twitter. It's one of the reasons why I like Tulsi, and I'm sorry that she got aced out the Democratic race so easily. Do you realize that Tulsi would be pulling more voters than Joe Biden right now? The Democratic leadership really blew it by not going with her. Okay, speaking of Biden, when he was in Philadelphia, he made his speech at the podium and then immediately left without answering any reporters' questions. Now, Republican Senator Mitt Romney has been caught taking large donations from globalist billionaire George Soros' organization, the Soros Fund Management, according to financial records. Political figures who have received money from Soros include Democrat powerhouses such as former President Obama, Senator Chuck Schumer, former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and others. Back in 2012, Soros said he saw little difference between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, and it has now been revealed that Romney is on George Soros' payroll. The Utah senator stunned everyone when he became the only Republican to vote to convict Donald Trump in the recent Democrat-led impeachment sham. Does his decision to accept Soros' dark money donations explain that decision? All righty. Pelosi had another whoopsie, if you will. She made a comment when she described recently attending Mass at a San Francisco church, despite the city's month-long ban on indoor masses. This was coming right after that video showing her getting her hair done in a salon, even though the salons are supposed to be closed. So a spokesperson for Pelosi's office said the speaker misspoke. She's not been in San Francisco since September 5th due to ongoing talks about COVID relief and appropriations. Pelosi, has been participating regularly in church services virtually. Now then, there has been reportedly an assassination attempt on President Trump. Apparently an envelope containing the poison ricin was delivered to the White House. Now, first of all the mail that goes to the White House doesn't go to the White House. It goes to a special center where it's all checked and examined, and it's pre-opened to make sure that nothing nasty is getting through. In this case, they found ricin in the envelope, and the package of the deadly poison was mailed to the White House, but it was intercepted by this screening center. Now, a female suspect was arrested by Customs and Border Patrol agents trying to enter the United States from Canada, and apparently they are saying that she is the one who mailed this letter with the ricin in it from Canada. All right. Apparently, over in Fredericksburg, Ohio, Trump's Amish supporters held a cow, horse, wagon, and carriage parade. That must have been something to see. I wish this article had more pictures. Okay. Good old Jeff Epstein. It's the gift that keeps on giving. More about that when we come back from these commercials. Welcome back to our show here, and a friendly nudge in the shoulder that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser. We need your help to keep doing what we're doing, to speak truth to power. to give Americans the facts they need to have so that they can make good choices, especially with an upcoming election here. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, getting on back to Jeff Epstein. It's amazing how much he stays in the news despite supposedly, reportedly, in theory, being dead. But apparently the courts have now subpoenaed all of the logs on all of Epstein's aircraft, which I think is 4 helicopters and 3 planes, including the Lolita Express. And apparently all the passengers and the flight logs will be made public. And so Epstein's rich and famous pals are starting to really panic about that. They don't want to be associated with the pedophile. Okay, for those of you living along the Gulf Coast, like you haven't had enough misery to deal with here, Tropical Storm Beta heads toward Texas and Louisiana. It's expected to make landfall within the next few hours. 10 million Americans have been given storm warnings for flooding and surges amid fear of up to 15 inches of rain along the Gulf course. I mean, this has been a terrible storm season. That's why they've run out of names, and now they're using the Greek alphabet to name the storms here. And whatever's left of Beta will be over us in Indiana this weekend here. Okay, getting on into the COVID-19 news here. Sadiq wants London locked down tomorrow. They want to lock it down again. And the British people are saying, no, we don't want to do that. Over at CNN, and I guess knowing CNN, you would expect this, but during a roundtable discussion, CNN's resident medical analyst Leanna Wen made the absurd claim that Black Lives Matter protests are safer to attend than Trump rallies. And Biden was making a speech this morning in which he said, you know, Trump doesn't care about his supporters. He packs them into those venues there, and you know they're spreading COVID-19 amongst themselves here. But according to CNN, attending a Black Lives Matter protest, you will be immune from COVID-19, apparently here. Over in Italy, Italians in 7 regions are going to vote in person this coming Sunday. In fact, they're going to have 2 days of voting shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Voters are required to wear masks and maintain social distancing as they cast ballots in regional contests originally scheduled for the spring, but delayed due to the pandemic. But they're able to go to the polls and they're able to vote in person. Now, so far, they're saying that the mail-in voters are 3-1 in favor of Biden, which strikes me as very odd because in theory, if there's no chicanery and rigging, the mail-in voting should mirror the in-person voting, statistically. Alrighty, there's been a second volunteer for the AstraZeneca vaccine trials to suffer this rare neurological condition, but they're insisting it's got nothing to do with the vaccine. Now, the first recipient of the trials fell ill after receiving 1 dose. She was later diagnosed with transverse myelitis, a rare inflammatory disease that affects the spinal cord, causing weakness, sensory alterations, and autonomic nervous system dysfunction. The company's spokeswoman later told the media the volunteer had undiagnosed multiple sclerosis, and the trials resumed. Now there's been a second female volunteer, recipient of the vaccine, suffering complications after the follow-up dose in September. AstraZeneca, didn't confirm a diagnosis, but a source told the New York Times it was also transverse myelitis. All righty. Getting on over to the protests and Black Lives Matter and Antifa and this woke culture here. And apparently old debunked claims of racism surface at New York museums. A group of both former and current employees are working to denounce racism and sexism at the Guggenheim Museum, is led by disgruntled white women who are intimidating employees of color to join their agenda. The group, A Better Guggenheim, claims it is holding the museum accountable for systemic racism and a toxic work environment. Members, including a leader who was dismissed and not hired back, calls to force the resignation of the museum's top executives. It feels sinister, said an employee of the museum who wanted to stay anonymous. They are terrorizing employees and compromising the work that people are doing to address the issues and diluting the real cause. It's a joke that it's called a better Guggenheim. Then they came for the benches, and Norway may cancel a problematic tribute to racist botanist von Linn, who coined the term Homo sapiens. Over in Oslo, there's a park bench bearing the name of Carl von Linn, an 18th century Swedish scientist known as the Prince of Botanists and the founder of modern taxonomy. And it could be removed after local politicians have deemed him to be racist. We got to take another break for a commercial. We'll be back after these words. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines here. I got a lot more news to get through, but people are already calling on in here. 800-313-9443, and we're going to go to Robert in Springfield. Hello, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I wanted to chime in on Ginsburg's passing. Prior to her nomination to the Supreme Court, she was touted as a self-proclaimed judicial activist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the movie that came out about her life, her biography, also portrayed her as a ACLU lawyer being a judicial activist. And if you were to look up the definition in Black's Law Dictionary of a judicial activist, well, you find that it's 180 degrees the opposite of the job description for a Supreme Court justice, despite the fact that there were only 3 senators that actually voted against her when she was nominated. Now, I just find it amazing that she's proclaimed as being a feminist icon and a legal scholar, yet when she discussed the ruling on Roe v. Wade, she said her first impression is that it had nothing to do with women's rights, that it had everything to do with the reduction of population or being population control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just an amazing fact that the icon of feminism in the legal arena thinks that the ruling to legalize abortion has nothing to do with a woman's right to her own body and her right to decide, but that it had everything to do with reducing the population.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So anyway, I think we're in a tough spot when somebody that is defined by a legal document like Black's Law Dictionary as being unqualified for the job is nominated to and put into the job. So what else do you have to go on but her own testimony?
Well, it is an interesting aspect of the Supreme Court that one does not actually have to be a lawyer or a judge to be nominated. Obviously, those are going to help, but we've had Supreme Court justices throughout history who were not lawyers or judges to begin with, and they were nominated because they were strict constitutionalists, because that is supposed to be the job of the Supreme Court, is to look at all laws and see, do they conform to the Constitution or not?
Right, and the exact opposite of that definition is a judicial activist, somebody who doesn't look at the Constitution or even case law, by the way. If you want to go even from a liberal perspective on the legal side, case law is not supposed to be supreme, but yet that's the way it's viewed today. But even from that perspective, a judicial activist is ignoring case law in order to socially change society by manipulating the court system.
Well, yeah, they're basically trying not to enforce the Constitution as it is, but to try and rewrite the laws to make the Constitution what they think it ought to be.
Right. Well, I just thought I'd chime in and put my 2 cents in.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the news about the rioting and so forth, Kamala Harris praises the rioting and looting, calls it marching, and states she has great optimism. Okay. Good for you. All right, a Louisville judge ordered the federal courthouse to close as officials are expected to announce a decision in the Breonna Taylor investigation. And I understand the entire city is starting to board up. And I guess they're telegraphing what that decision is going to be, which means they're not going to prosecute the police who shot her. Turning to the international news now, Trump is sending troops and heavy armor back into Syria, supposedly in response to Russian and Turkish provocations. According to 3 defense officials, the Pentagon has moved a small number of troops to Syria this week after a series of increasingly intense clashes between the U.S. and Russian military. Apparently, along with that, the U.S. is sending M2A2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles to challenge Russian forces in northern Syria. And apparently, the Bradley IFVs represent the M2A2 Bradley is armed with a 25 millimeter chain gun, a 7.62 millimeter coaxial machine gun, and a dual tow anti-tank guided missile launcher. This makes the IFV the heaviest weapon deployed by the U.S. on the ground in Syria. We're going to go back to the phones here to Sammy in Vegas. Hello, Sammy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Biodegradable.
Hey, I love you, Guy. I have been listening to you since you were back with GCN, and that goes back a long time.
That goes back a very long time.
What's really bothering me, Mike, is we want the old Mike back. It's this. I mean, just anytime you turn on to. It used to be researchers, people that researched things. Everybody knew the left-right paradigm. You know what I mean? The Democrats and the Republicans, neither one of them are our friend, okay? We all know that, people that's done any research. Now, all the shows are just starting to turn into a Republican commercial. It's all Republican talking points. Look at all the gaffes. Joe Biden has made a lot of gaffes. I mean, he's an old man. Everybody knows that. But look at all
careful about who you're calling an old man.
Hey, I'm right there with you, Guy.
Yeah, well, you have my deepest sympathies.
But look at all the gaffes Trump's made.
Yeah.
Like when he did the interview on ABC. Nobody brings that up. It's like it doesn't happen. And another thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, I've done some research on this, and I wish you would too. Remember Li Yang that was on Tucker Carlson?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if she's a plant. I think back to that so-called Kuwaiti nurse who told us all that the Iraqi troops were taking premature babies out of the incubators so the incubators could be sent back to Iraq, and that turned out to be a complete hoax.
This is a hoax too, Mike. I wish you would research it. If you research it a little bit, you'll find out that she's actually working right now for the Rule of Law Foundation. Look up the Rule of Law Foundation. They've been in Hong Kong. They've been in Hong Kong with the Hong Kong riots and everything against China. And she's actually working for the Rule of Law Foundation. Who's it run by? Steve Bannon.
Really?
Yes, please look up Rule of Law.
All right, I'll take a look into that.
And like now, I was listening to a show a couple weeks ago, Saturday night on RBN, and it was just one Tucker Carlson after another, and Laura Ingraham hit it out of the park. Tucker Carlson hit it out of the park. Anybody that's done research, Mike, knows. They're going to tell you, everybody wants to hear what they want to hear. Tucker is going to tell you exactly what you want to hear if you're a Trump supporter. He reads everything from a script. And there was you can research this. One of his script writers was actually on a website talking, I write everything Tucker says. He's an heir to the Swanson family. How deep state can you get? Every story, you know Swanson.
Yes.
And, he comes in. You know how it works when you're doing broadcasting. He comes in, he reads his script before he goes on air. And
That's funny. That's not how it works here.
well, you don't have people you can pay, you know,
Hey,
$500,000 a year.
hey, what's
Things like
that? I
that.
used to know what that was.
But do a little research on that. It's like when I turn into the alternative radio, it's just Republican talking points anymore. Have you noticed that?
Well, I think the vast majority of the American people want Trump reelected, and I think the idea that Biden is a threat to him, for the most part, is an illusion to basically cover up the fact that there's going to be a lot of skullduggery come the actual election.
If any Democrat was doing for Israel what Trump is doing, oh my God, there wouldn't be an empty podium anywhere. But because Trump's doing it, nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, we talked about it here on this show, and it's one of the areas in which I'm disappointed in Trump. But Biden has already signaled that he's just as pro-Israel.
Mike, they're two sides of the same coin. There's
Yes.
no difference. Now,
Okay, so Israel's a null factor in the election. You know, which way it doesn't matter which way we vote, Israel is still going to get the money and the weapons that they want. Okay, so let's look at the other issues. Let's look at the actual points of difference between Trump and Biden.
Honestly, I don't think there's going to be that much. They're two sides of the same coin. They'll just tippy-toe. The Republicans will get by with what they can feed to their supporters. Then
well, the Democrats are doing exactly the same thing. You know, you've got Kamala Harris out there saying the rioters are just marchers. That's what they want to hear. You know, all those people who are looting and burning, they want to believe they're the good guys, and that's what the Democrats are telling them.
Like now we have these callers, and this is an alternative station. We have these callers calling in, like the guy from Florida, that he'll call in and do his Mark Levin impersonation every day. And I want the old Mike back when he used to, research Vince Foster and used to research 9/11. Nobody's researching anything anymore. It's either Republican talking points or Democrat talking points. You understand what I mean?
I understand what you mean here, but we haven't had a recent. Well, I mean, we researched Seth Rich. We researched the Russophobia issue. And, you know, I'm sort of controlled by the news environment, as it were. You know, I'm getting older and a little slower. But yeah, we all are. But you know, I'm finally shaking this medical thing I've been dealing with for the last year, and so the old Mike is starting to come back. I think. I could be wrong, but
we want you back, Mike.
I think by next spring I'll be back to my normal obnoxious self.
Stop with the Republican talking points. Nobody's taking it serious anymore.
Well, you know, again, I'm driven by what's being reported in the corporate news media, and where possible, you know, I'll put something up and say I don't think this is accurate, like the issue with the Chinese virologist, who I think is a plant to bash China with.
She is a plant. You can research that, Mike. You'll find out she is a plant. She's run by Steve Bannon. And look what Steve Bannon did. I hate to take up any more time, but look what Steve Bannon did. Did you research Cambridge Analytica?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Cambridge Analytica. Everything we say on our phones, every email, every website we go to goes to Cambridge Analytica.
Yes.
And who the Mercer family, the guy that's in charge of the Mercer family, he's running a program through Cambridge Analytica, and Steve Bannon is also working with him, and they got the talking points. They know what the people want to hear. They know what the Republicans want to hear, and
I'm sure they know what the Democrats want to hear.
Of course, and Steve Bannon went to the senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, and
Yes.
tried to get him, look, I can make you president. This is what you've got to do. We know what they want you to say. And Ted Cruz said, no, I'm going to win it without this. And so then he goes to Donald Trump. And what does Donald Trump say? Because they know the Republicans want to hear, build the wall, lock her up, all the talking points, and that's exactly what Donald Trump was preaching.
Yeah.
And it worked. It got him elected.
It got him elected here, and he did let us down on a lot of that.
Mike, we are in deep trouble, brother. I'm telling you.
We are, for a lot of reasons, extending beyond the presidential election.
Both sides are controlled.
Both sides are
Do you
corrupt.
agree?
I think it's probably a more accurate way of putting it.
Yes. Okay, Mike.
Okay.
Love you, guy. I've never called in before, but I've been listening to you for years.
Well,
And
thank you very much for that.
old Mike back.
Well, I'm working on bringing the old Mike back just as hard as I can. Anyway, Sammy, thank you very much for the phone call. Let's switch to Joe in Tennessee. Joe, I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Well, real quick to Sammy, I like him. He sounds like a nice guy, but, you can be so ideological that you're not going to have any chance of winning. You can just sit in your room and be a purist, and that's it. What I like about Trump is he's turning the Republican Party into the populist party. So, yeah, we might be making Republican points now, but a lot of the Republican points now are like against NAFTA, they're against China and global trade, and they're like putting conservatives, pro-life people. So, you should look at the victories that have happened with Trump being populist. And yeah, I say Tucker Carlson 10 years ago was a lot more of a neocon than he is now. So that's a good thing, so I understand where he's coming from, but, you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think in politics, you have to try to at both parties, the only hope for the populist wing of any party was to take over the Republican Party. And that's what I think Trump is in the process of doing. And I agree on the Trump's weakness is his ideological attachment to Israel. But I think that Trump represents to me like a Pat Buchanan, except for the Israeli thing. And Pat Buchanan would never be able to be president because of the Israeli thing. So you have Trump, basically Pat Buchanan, but he's pro-Israel because that's the only way you're going to get in power. But I really wanted to call about the Ginsburg thing. And, once again, Trump is brilliant.
Okay, well, Joe,
yes.
Stay on the line. I'm going to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Joe in Tennessee, and we're talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So, Joe, take it away.
Well, Hillary Clinton this weekend said that Trump is destroying the institutions, and he is. But how he's doing it is by exposing the corruption of the Clintons in the deep state and Zionist control of the United States. Now,
yes.
with this death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's basically it's going to be wonderful watching the hearings. We're going to see it firsthand. Hopefully, he picks that Catholic lady, because then it's going to the American people are going to watch on TV Feinstein and the whole Jewish deep state cabal. Even Harris is all tied in with that. The lefties being hysterical at some nice Catholic lady that adopted 2 Haitian kids and has a learning disabled child and 4 others, and went to Notre Dame. That's the other thing. Notre Dame versus Ivy League. This is populism. It's going to be a populist champion woman against the deep state on the Democrats. So what I've always loved about Trump's presidency, whether it's accidental or just on purpose, is the exposure. He's exposing all these things. That's why the institutionals, all our institutions are being destroyed by Trump, because they're all corrupt, and Trump's showing it. And he's going to show, anytime there's been one of these hearings, the American people get to watch these vile, mostly Jews and blacks, to sit there and get hysterical and attack normal people, and it's wonderful for the populist side, and it's wonderful for the cause. And to anybody that says there's no difference between Biden and Trump, just the Supreme Court what's happening right now ought to tell you there's a huge difference. He's going
Yes.
to put a constitutionalist on the Supreme Court, and Biden will want a black woman like radical, like Jackson, or somebody else that's like Ginsburg. You don't think there's a difference? I mean, don't insult my intelligence. I mean, yeah, there are some issues where there's a lot of deep state stuff going on and playing both sides. But there's a big difference with did you see his speech at the about the 1619 project and about our history?
I
What
did.
other president would have the guts to make a speech like that? And to say that Trump is just like everybody else, that's ridiculous. I think he's the 4 years now of almost a Trump. There's no war, 311 miles of the wall that he fought tooth and nail for. Been impeached, exposed the FBI. I mean, I could keep going on. So this is really getting to be. They're the talking points. Those are I don't know where they're getting their talking points from, but those are ridiculous talking points that are on their face ridiculous. I mean, Trump, whether you might not like him, say you don't like what he's doing, but he's been doing a lot of good things. And this Supreme Court pick is going to be fun to watch, and it's going to just be another exposure for the American people, not only of the Senate, the deep state, but they're going to see the media sit there. They're going to watch this lady talk on TV, and then they're going to see the media try to gaslight them into what they just saw, that it didn't happen. So enjoy the show. Enjoy the show. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks an awful lot, Joe. We're going to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to David in Boston. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Oh, hi, Michael. Hey, Michael, you'll never guess where I am, so I'll tell you. I'm on the red line in the Boston subway T system, but I'm at JFK Station, where the stop people get off when they want to go to the John F. Kennedy Library. Have you ever been to it?
I've never been to the John F. Kennedy Library, but I've certainly been to New York and, taken the subway and, had that whole experience.
Yeah. Now that you're back in the continental United States, out in Indiana, if you and Claire come back east, maybe for foliage season in October, the color's beautiful back here. But if you ever get back to Boston, and the next time you do, bring Claire to the JFK Memorial Museum and Library. It's really something.
I certainly will.
Yeah. So, Michael, it's so hard to get a complete thought out sometimes when we're limited to about 5 minutes on a call. But last Friday, when I brought up Soros in the Ouroboros, that out of the Kamala would know about it, the Ouroboros, out of the Zohar and everything and all that Jewish mysticism. But the reason Soros started with the letters at the end of the Ouroboros and everything is because it regenerates itself by eating its own tail. So,
yes.
So Soros is trying to keep the Holy Serpent dominant by, he took the letters off the tail. And it's real creepy stuff, But Michael, I'd love to talk about. I call her. That's right. I call her Ruth Bader Meinhof. It's in the Bader Meinhof gang. I'd love to talk about Ruth Bader Meinhof in as in the Red Brigades and everything. But she was just as revolutionary as them. But Mike, what I need to talk about, and maybe I'll just touch on this and let on some of the other callers and everything. But last night I was listening to talk radio, and the talk show host just kept emphasizing that George Floyd, he just died of a fentanyl overdose. And he wouldn't, in other words, Derek Chauvin wasn't at all culpable in any respect. He was just doing excellent police work, and George Floyd would have died anyways, and blah, blah, blah. But, Mike, this is what I got I was going to call into him, and I said, there's an old saying, convince a man against his will, and he's of the same opinion still. So I didn't waste my time. But Mike, I had this maybe a crazy thought or a strange thought, but after I was listening to the guy, says, so I said, it's like Jesus Christ when he was crucified. It's almost like the Roman authorities, Pontius Pilate, or the Roman pigs that crucified Jesus. It's like saying, hey, this guy was a master carpenter. He was always swinging hammers and pounding nails. He could do anything with wood. He was a miracle worker when it came to woodworking. He was the most incredible carpenter you'd ever want to meet. When it came to hammer, wood, and nails, man, he could do anything. It was like miraculous what he could do as a carpenter and everything. So, Jesus crucified himself, Mike. He was so good with hammers and nails.
Yeah. Well, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword, and he who lives by carpentry tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, sometimes it gets that absurd. But listen, I'll close with this Derek Chauvin. I wasn't there. I don't know what the full truth is, but I know he's culpable to a certain extent, at least, if not fully responsible, at least to a certain extent. But this is what I say, Mike. Isn't his name Derek Chauvin? To me, his name even lends itself to Derek Chauvinist Pig. Chauvinist Pig. Doesn't his name even lend itself? But Mike, here's the thing. So I'll let you move on. I'll continue as best I can listening to the rest of the show. But thanks for taking my call, and aloha.
Aloha. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing there, Mike?
I'm doing fine.
Mike, I was thinking about what you said before with Tulsi Gabbard, and then goes right into what Joe was saying. First of all, Tulsi Gabbard, I do not believe it. I disagree with you about the Democrats making a mistake with Tulsi Gabbard. They did not make a mistake. Trust me. They did not want that woman, okay? They are neoliberals as opposed to the neocons of the Republicans. They're warmongers. They're Ziocons. They're everything the Republican Party is, and probably even worse, okay? And they wanted a warmonger in there, and they got it. 2 warmongers, actually. But what Tulsi should have done is as soon as she withdrew, as soon as she could see the handwriting on the wall that she wasn't going to win a Democratic nomination, she should have withdrawn and run third party. She would have taken a guy like Jesse Ventura as a vice president, and maybe Cynthia McKinney or somebody like that. She'd win by a landslide. She'd beat both parties by a landslide. But she didn't want to do that for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe she was threatened. Who knows? But that brings me back to what Joe was talking about with Trump. Look, Mike, I told you I don't want to vote for Trump, but I'm probably going to have to because there's no alternative right now. There is no Tulsi, and there's no Cynthia McKinney, there's no Jesse Ventura. However, I don't like having to vote for that clown, okay? I think he's horrible. You just brought out the thing before about, sending more weapons into Syria. Okay, yes. We don't belong in Syria. We don't belong in any of those places. And Joe was talking about he's not really a Zionist or whatever else. He is a Zionist, for crying out loud. He is run by the Zionists. His son-in-law is a chief Zionist. And this ruse, by the way, they're making out like he's a great peacemaker because of Israel and the 2 Gulf states there. That doesn't mean anything. Israel was never at war with those Gulf states. They were always very friendly with them. I have a feeling it has to do with the, what do you call that again? The Kabbalah. The Kabbalah and parts of the Quran, that these people are basically one and the same, pretty much. Somewhere down maybe a few hundred years ago, they're one and the same. But that's my opinion. That's, it's just an opinion. But the fact of the matter is there was no animosity there. There still isn't. So that was
they had relations. Israel had relations with Bahrain and the UAE clandestinely for many, many years. This just sort of brought it out in the open.
Absolutely, and with Saudi Arabia also. Okay, no, they don't kid me. I mean, they kid some people. I mean, the fake news, and I made a good YouTube on my YouTube channel today about the fake news network, Fox News Network. We're hypocrites. I'm back in, my cloud, I didn't have enough room my cloud. I finally figured out what the problem was, and now I'm back to making videos again. So I hope y'all watch them. And I don't get any money from this, Mike. I'm not looking to get monetized or anything else. I'm looking as a patriot to do this because I want to pass information around. I think we all should try to be citizen journalists, and this is the best way of doing it. Sooner or later, they're probably going to kick me off anyway because I'm not politically correct on there. I do use 4-letter words because, to emphasize things, and those are the facts. But I do try to bring out as much as possible. And one of the things I brought out is the fake news network. And about Trump, I also make it very clear. I do not want to vote for Trump, but the Democrats gave me no choice, and nobody else gave a choice either. There is nobody else. Biden and Harris are totally unacceptable, Mike. I was at the gym today on a TV there. You had that fool talking, Biden. He was talking there, and he had that stupid mask on there all the time. I felt like jumping into the TV, taking that mask and stuffing it down his disgusting throat. Okay, I mean, it is so obvious what kind of an administration that clown would bring us.
Did you notice how he brought up the story? Did you notice how Biden brought up the story about Trump denigrating our veterans by saying they were losers and suckers, even though Jeffrey Goldberg over at The Atlantic has now admitted the story was likely false?
I didn't see it on this. I see him make something about it before. And Jeffrey Goldberg is a neocon, Ziocon of the worst type, going back to years. Warmonger, big supporter of the Iraq War, the illegal invasion of Iraq. So, I didn't believe a word of that, what he said about Trump. There's enough stuff I don't like about Trump. And one of them is to keep our troops in the Middle East, to keep on antagonizing Russia, being right on their borders. You're tempting the possibility of a third world war, which would probably be, like Einstein said, the fourth world war would be fought with sticks and stones if there's anybody left to fight a fourth world war. Okay?
Yeah.
And I don't like the thing with China. I think this is getting too tense with China. I don't know if China really, this is a biological weapon or not. It probably wasn't, because I don't think China would have sicked it on themselves if it was. Okay? So the fact of the matter is, I don't like voting for Trump. I think he's horrendous. I think this country is in terrible trouble. But like I said, Biden and Harris, to me, are totally unacceptable. The Democratic Party is completely out of it today. It's not the Democratic Party of JFK. You see what they did to Tulsi. They practically called her a traitor. This woman who served all these years in the military and actually served in a combat area. Okay, and they did nothing but insult her. I think they're disgusting, but I think both parties are disgusting. But I'll tell you this: if Tulsi ran, she would have won in a landslide. Trump, that's the one Democrat that Trump was afraid of. You notice he never backtalked her. He never, even if she attacked him, he'd never say anything because he knew he could not stand up to her. If in a debate between Tulsi and Trump, he would kick his butt, and she'd kick Biden's butt at the same time together if she ran third party, which I wish she did, but unfortunately she didn't. So that's all I got to say, Mike. I just wanted to say, Joe, come on, man. You're not going to convince me that Trump is any good, okay? He is a Zionist. He is a shrill for the state of Israel, okay? That's why we're in the Middle East. You kid nobody, all right? Stop trying to kid yourself, Joe. It's not Trump. I mean, it's not that Trump is so good. It's that Biden and Harris are so bad. That's why I got to vote for Trump. So
once again, we have to pick the lesser of two evils.
Exactly. So that's about all I got to say, Mike. Anyway, I hope you guys watch my YouTube. Okay? Bye.
All right. Thanks an awful lot, Mark, for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, Michael. Good day to you. Bumbling and mumbling. Mike, first off, I don't know if you saw the story about what's going on with the Postal Service in Chicago at Southside. 7 postal workers died.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So, that's our future. That's going to be our future here. We're going to be like the movie Kurt Russell made, Escape from New York, Chicago, any big city. But also here in South Florida now, Mike, it looks like now on papers down here are talking about it could be this lady Barbara, Kula, whatever, the lady who's going to be for the Supreme Court. So I want to know, who do you think Trump's going to pick for the Supreme Court?
I really don't know. I'm just starting to look into these individuals. There's reasons to pick all of them. I think one of that earlier callers had said, the one who's a Catholic, who's adopted the kids and everything. It's going to be very hard to throw any mud at her and have it stick. I know Trump is going to says he may meet that lady in Florida on his next trip down there. That was just on the air here a few minutes before we went to broadcast. So I really don't know yet.
Well, Amy Coney Barrett might be a good pick because she's got the initial Ruth Gator Binsberg. They can call her ACB, whatever.
That's not a good reason to vote for a Supreme Court judge, just because their initials are euphonious. And
the media might calm down a little bit because you know how the media plays it, Mike. When you are in their control of the czar. But
they're touting her as the front runner. They're touting her as the front runner right now.
Yeah, I believe so too. And I think the other lady will be right there. Trump makes a pick, but I think Trump's got to do this by Friday. He's got to make the pick immediately and put her on. And whoever Rhino Republican doesn't bet this woman to be the Supreme Court justice, let her get voted out off. Let the Democrat take the seat, because right now, Mike, we can't continue on this road. We cannot continue on with this licky-kissy liberalism nonsense with this 1619 crap. Trump is doing something. So your caller, Mark, I want him to know that Trump's at least putting out something that has to go on with the schools and the colleges. 1776. 1776 should have never been taken out of the schools, Mark. And Trump is bringing it back. Who allowed all this? A bunch of rhino, licky-kissy, touchy-feely whites. That's who's behind this. We're not. We should act like the majority, not the minority. But, these whites for the last 35 years been acting like a bunch of sissies, okay? They're a bunch of chicken hawks, livers. And they're acting like, we have to kiss the butt of the Democrats. Look what they're doing in our schools and our universities and our colleges, Mike. It's disgusting. It really, truly is. Look at our cities, murder after murder every weekend. Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Detroit. It's insane. Look at our immigration problems, Mark. Nobody ever talked about that. Not even the great Ronald Reagan talked about immigration like Trump. Okay? No, Ronald Reagan never brought no angel mothers or fathers up on the stage and let them speak and vent how their loved ones got murdered by illegal aliens. Since this corona crap started, and I want Dustin to hear this. I want Dustin to hear it loud and clear. I hope he calls in. They found out, Mike, here in the South Florida newspapers of Florida Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel and the Herald, that these masks are still contagious when you take them off them and laying on your counter in your house.
Yes.
These masks are actually making you people sicker. It's not, look, in 1960, Mike, I already told you 100 times about this. What about tuberculosis? Why are these illegal? Why were these illegals able to pour in our country by the millions when most of them were carrying tuberculosis? Where was the mask at the border for these Border Patrol for the last 10 years? To stop these people from getting tuberculosis. TB. All we're hearing is about corona hoax, which is a nonsense thing. It came out of Hong Kong. It was an atomic weapon they used. Okay? It was manufactured as a weapon for the Chinese to cut their population down. And they eventually escaped out of there, came over here because all these Chinese kept coming in here. And that pig Pelosi kept saying, how dare you want to shut Chinatown down? And all these demon rats, Mike. Who's kidding who here? Who's kidding here? And all these callers I hear you. Some of these callers are nonsensical. Now, Trump has brought out the illegal immigration problem like nobody ever has. Nobody else has built the wall. He wasn't funded by Congress to build that wall. He took it upon himself to build the wall. Was the wall getting built? I really don't know. I haven't been on there and inspected it. But from what I'm hearing is there's 330 miles built. So hopefully that's true and that's the case. But getting back to the Supreme Court, Mike, what do you think is going to happen? I want to hear you for a minute. What your opinion of how this is going to play out? Then I want to rebuttal you on it.
Well, it's going to be a circus.
Okay,
There's no two ways about that. And we've got the Democrats are throwing tantrums here, and you've got Nancy Pelosi and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about impeaching Donald Trump again. They don't really have a reason to do it, but the idea is they're going to impeach him and then throw that into the Senate and say, you have to deal with this before you confirm his Supreme Court justice. And I think that's likely what's going to happen.
Again, Mike, they've thrown everything at Donald Trump, and he's still the president. They tried Russia hoax. They tried this corona. They tried every stinking thing they could. And you know what? He's still the president, and we need to get him for another 4 years so he can really be like the bull in the china shop and crush all these phony, fake glasses that are all over the place in this China.
Well, it's not enough to get Trump the White House. We have to give him a Republican Senate and House.
Oh, absolutely. Positively. But, Mike, and I'm leaving with this thought. I know this is the main thing I have to talk about. What they did to Newt Gingrich the other day on Fox News, and Harris Faulkner, I really don't believe wanted to do that to him. She probably wanted to ramble on about Soros, but the way Fox News was told on her mic to shut up, get this guy Newt off. Newt Gingrich was an ex-Speaker of the House, long time back. Newt, the producer
Tom,
of that show at that time.
Tom, hold that thought. Hold that thought. I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back, and I'm going to want you to complete that story about Newt Gingrich. We'll be right back with Tom and more phone calls. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Tom in Florida. We're talking about Fox News and Newt Gingrich. Tom, take it away.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, what I just wanted to say is if the producer and Harris Faulkner would have kept going on for another 5 minutes, they both would have been terminated the next day. They would have their resignation letters had to be turned in because the higher beings in Fox would have fired the producer and Harris Faulkner, even though it looked like Harris wanted to keep rambling with Newt about Soros' real motive and what these billionaire Zionists are trying to do to the world and to the United States in particular. So we already know, everybody your calls, your show knows about Hollywood and all who's controlling all this filthy nonsense. And like I said, Mike, the asphalt's telling the gasoline what to do. The majority is not being the majority. We're allowing a minority to tell us what to do, what to watch. Look at these commercials. White men with black women with white, black men with white women. It's all a narrative to do all this insanity. And like I told your show a month ago, a lot of these black females are not happy what's going on when they're trying to take their black male counterparts and put them on white women. These black women aren't happy with that, Mike. And you know that.
Nope.
But there again, that's the power of the media and the filth that they spew. They're spewing out filthy hate. If Donald Trump were to say that 200 million people died from the coronavirus, like bumbling Biden, I hope one of your callers calls in after me, and I hope Miles calls in. I love when Miles calls in. I want to hear if 200 million people died from the coronavirus and Donald Trump were to say that, like bumbling Biden, they would have him put up for a mental, they put him in a rubber room with a rubber duck.
Yeah.
They'd padlock him in a rubber room, Donald Trump. But this bumbling Biden gets away with all this filthy nonsense, and nobody's even holding his feet to the fire. This Biden's getting away with utter murder just by running his spew out of his filthy mouth that he doesn't know what he's talking about. The guy doesn't know where he's at half the time. And Donald Trump's right. Maybe this guy's taking a shot up his ass, Mike, because something's going on here. Out of here. This guy, Biden, is getting away with murder through the media. And no other man, since I've been following politics, which is quite a while, has got away with Joe Biden's got away with, Mike. You agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, they're definitely propping him up. There's no question.
There's no question. And to Mark was right about Tulsi. If any Democrat, they would have a chance as far as being intellectually compatible to being probably a good candidate would have been Tulsi Gabbard. But they shut her out. They wouldn't even let her speak for 2 minutes, not 1 minute at the convention, Democratic convention, Mike. Tulsi didn't get 1 minute on the stage, did she?
Nope.
So how can people who support
they
Tulsi Gabbard,
basically handed her hat and showed her the door.
That's right. And you know what? Anybody who voted for Tulsi during the Democratic election should not even think. They should just sit out and not even vote at all. Or vote for Trump. They should definitely not vote for the bumbling imbecile Biden. But, Mike, one more thing, and I let you go. I know you got other callers.
Yes.
Real quickly, speaking about the violence of what's going on in Chicago with these postal workers, none of them had died yet, Mike, but 3 of them are in critical condition. These are catastrophic injuries that keep happening through all these cities. And we're not even talking about Antifa and Black Lives Matter, Mike. Just think of the multiple millions and millions of dollars, these lawsuits, these injuries, these people have to have treatment the rest of their life. Who knows what kind of injuries. It's probably in the billions of dollars. And we're not even talking about illegal aliens, Mike. We're talking about American citizens that are getting shot and wounded and forget, the ones that are dead, they're dead. But I'm talking about the catastrophic wounds from these wounded people all over the United States.
Yes.
And then look at all the Americans who are getting killed by DUIs from illegal aliens. Who's paying for all this? Catastrophic. The financial aspect of this. So, you know, what's going on in Chicago is a microcosm of things to come for the rest of the country if Bumbling Biden gets as president. That's my opinion, Mike. I don't know how you feel about it, but I believe that's going to happen. Well, there you go. And if you and me agree on that, when two people agree, we know it's going to happen. And, you know, Mike, I just hope you have a couple of great callers call in, like Miles and a couple other great callers. And yes, some great callers to call in, and we'll see what happens, what they got to say. But I tell you, Mike, I see this country right now. Florida right now is real tight. I don't know. They had a poll that came out here in Florida, Mike. Trump is winning by 1 point right now.
Yeah, we reported on that earlier in the show.
Yeah, Trump pulling ahead a little bit here in Florida. And when I went to a rally they had on one of these parks here the other day, I noticed there was like only 30 Biden supporters and there's like 500 Trump supporters. So I don't know if that's a sign, but that's how it is. So we'll see. It's all going to be really interesting here in the next month. So
yeah, it really is.
Call, Mike. Have a great day.
All right, thanks an awful lot.
And I hope Dustin calls in about the masks, Mike, because the masks are definitely, I believe the masks are making us sicker than helping us. I really believe that.
Okay.
This is a Wuhan flu. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call here. And we're coming up on a commercial break, so I'm going to hold off taking another phone call. Getting on back to the war in Syria, dozens of U.S. tanker trucks filled with oil leave Syria for Iraq. The Syrian Arab News Agency reported that the American forces transferred a large amount of oil from eastern Syria to Iraq over the weekend. The agency quoted local sources as saying that a convoy of 30 tankers and a tanker for the American occupation loaded with stolen oil from the oil wells it occupies in Syria's Al Jazeera left this evening to Iraqi lands through the illegal Al Walid crossing in the Al Yaraba region in the eastern countryside of Al Hasaka. I'm going to take a break for commercials, back with more phone calls after these two words. And welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Bobby in Florida. Hello, Bobby. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You know, I never hardly ever watch TV at all unless it's reruns of Green Acres and stuff like that. I love that. But anymore, I don't even watch it because of the commercials. But I had a TV, an old TV. We had it on our porch because my girlfriend's brother was here, long story short. But we turned it on last night, and the Emmys was on there. I don't know if anyone's called in about that, but it was like, oh, my God. We were just both just didn't know what to say. When she looked at me, what the hell are they talking about? It was crazy. They had a postal guy. They were like making fun of the post office. They had a postal guy hand out the awards to Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, and then it was just crazy. And then they had a guy have Jimmy Kimmel scream out Black Lives Matter, keep screaming it, had him yelling it out, like, you know, like I'm your master type of thing. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. And everything was gay, this, gay, that, you know, black, lesbian. What has this got to do with the movies? They're basically telling you we shape society and this is what we're doing to you. I mean, it was really just spoon-feeding you. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, a year ago, you could watch the country. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say, you know, I didn't watch the Emmys. I pretty much burned out on award ceremonies when I worked in the industry. And, you know, I'd watch if something I was working on was up for an award. But other than that, it was, you know, just the industry giving itself a prize for being the industry. And I learned the hard way during Stargate just how political it is. And that the awards very often have little to do with merit and everything to do with political influence. So I took a pass on it. I understand that there were some moments there. I haven't seen the overnights on it, so I don't know how many people tuned in. But I would make a prediction here that it probably was not a tremendously large audience.
Oh my God! It was. I don't even. You know, I don't watch any of this stuff ever. We just happen to turn a TV on. Mm-hmm. Maybe some kind of awards. I don't know anything about Emmys. I don't even keep up with any. I haven't watched TV in years, really. I mean, well, every now and then, if the Green Acres is on, I got the digital. I don't have cable, any of that. I hate TV, but it was on. Let's see this. It got interesting because first they started an assault. What's the post office got to do with movies? Then they went to a nurse in a hospital. Then they had one of the contestants, the guy was a Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Kimmel or somebody announcing names, and then this nurse comes up to him with a swab and gives him a COVID test. Well, she didn't shove it up all the way up his nose like she's supposed to, but it looked, they were just, here, take your test.
Yeah.
Like, this is, like, they're pushing this down our throat. This is what's going to happen to you. Get used to this. No. If they come in my yard, they're going to get, I don't care what, I don't even want to talk about what I'm going to do. I'm going to
probably better not to do that on the radio.
No, but I'm going to defend myself, put it that way. But that was really scary to see that. It was like, wow, this is in your face. This is what we're doing here. And then Tyler Perry gets on there, and I'm thinking, I like this guy. I like his movies and all. And he starts putting down white people. He said his mom had told him never work for a white man because his dad worked for a white man. He didn't pay him or some kind of crime. Oh, my God, this guy's a racist. They're racist. They're the ones being racist. But, that's TV. And, that's in reality, I see black people all the time. Like I tell you, I don't live in a black neighborhood. I grew up in one, but all the black people I see, they don't, let you get in front of them at Walmart or open a door for you. I'm not seeing that in the real world. I'm not, at least not here. I'm sure it's happening in cities. And I believe the CIA is behind this and the FBI. I believe it's own government doing it to us. People, maybe that's just doing it. I'll let you go, Mike. Maybe somebody will chime in on that, but it was the craziest thing I ever seen. And then you see these other stars saying how wonderful all this is, like the Jennifer Aniston girl. Oh, this is just the greatest. You agree with this? This crap is pure communism. It's awful. We are in trouble. We really are in trouble. If people keep watching this crap and going with it, we're done. I'll talk to you later, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, Mike, I'm going to touch a couple of threads that have been talked about here before. One of which was, I think, Joe from Tennessee called up, and he was talking about Pat Buchanan, who was a viable presidential candidate.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, I actually liked him as well. Pat Buchanan disappeared from any sort of candidacy list because he spoke out against Israel, and he's the one that coined the phrase Zionist occupied territory. Then we had who else? Mark talked about Tulsi Gabbard, who I agree. I disagree with her on the Second Amendment, but I would have voted for her as well.
Yes.
But what about Tulsi Gabbard? Well, she went over to Syria and disagreed with the Israeli-backed war that got us into Syria.
Yes.
And so she disappeared off the narrative. Jimmy Carter, president of the United States, is no longer able to speak at the Democratic convention because he spoke out against Israel. He's a non-person in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Our entire narrative is shaped by these fifth column Zionist supremacists. And just like your previous caller just now was talking about, they vilified, divide and conquer, vilified white people. It's hard to look anywhere where we're not being pilloried. That's a completely Jewish-driven narrative. That's a completely Jewish-driven narrative. And we cannot even have a candidate that makes it as a candidate. They don't even get out of the primaries, and they don't even get very far at all. I mean, look how good Tulsi Gabbard was. It took her like 30 seconds to eviscerate Kamala Harris. And
yes.
Kamala Harris was out. They found a way to bring her back. Tulsi Gabbard was against Israel. They found a way to bring Kamala Harris back, and who's a complete shill for Israel. And Tulsi Gabbard, who's not, is now gone, even though she beat the hell out of her in a debate, made her look like the fool that she is. But everything is being shaped. Everything on TV, everything we're seeing from a cultural point of view, and this is they're driving us down the South Africa road, and it's totally apparent, and I wish more people would wake up to it.
I agree. I agree.
So, anyways, that's it for me, Mike. I know you got some time left. Thanks, guy. Bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the news here, Iran's Rouhani is vowing a crushing response after Pompeo declares restoration of all sanctions. And Pompeo last Saturday announced the restoration of all sanctions on Iran following the expiration of a 30-day window for the Islamic Republic to come back into conformity to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Now, this, of course, is ignoring the fact that Donald Trump unilaterally pulled out of the JCPOA some time back. And so it is the United States that is not in conformity. Now, the reality is that the rest of the world is basically saying, no, we don't agree with this. And so the United States is very much in isolation. They are, as usual, threatening sanctions against anybody who does business with Iran in a way that Washington does not agree. And all that's really doing is alienating the rest of the world here. But even America's European allies point out, Washington is attempting to uphold snapback sanctions based on a deal it pulled out of in May of 2018. Now, Pompeo announced the reimplementation of virtually all previously terminated UN sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which means the U.S. has gone rogue. The UN keeps saying there is no support for this. There is no support for this. And the U.S. attitude is, well, we don't care what the rest of the world is thinking. We're going to do what we want to do. Meanwhile, Iranian General Hossein Salami, head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, threatened revenge against the United States for the drone attack that killed the country's top general in January. The USS Nimitz aircraft carrier safely transited on Friday through the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important choke point for oil shipments. It is now in the Gulf amid tensions with Iran. All right, without saying who carried it out, although we can all guess, it is now being reported the Natanz explosion 2 months ago at a key uranium enrichment facility was meant to send a message of determination to stop the Islamic Republic's nuclear program, which nobody can actually prove exists. The Jerusalem Post has learned the purpose of the attack was to send an unambiguous deterrent message that progress toward a nuclear weapon beyond certain red lines would not be tolerated. Now remember, under the terms of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which both the United States and Iran have signed and ratified, Iran is allowed nuclear technology for non-military purposes, such as power stations, medical isotopes, industrial uses like destatикers and so forth. Now, the U.S. envoy says Russia must agree to an arms control deal with no NATO scale back, or else it's happy to modernize the nukes without start. Now, the U.S. has made Russia an offer it hopes it can't refuse. Accept a new arms control deal, including no limits on NATO weapons in Europe, or deal with a modernized American nuclear arsenal on its doorstep. Following the U.S. unilateral withdrawal from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty last year, the 2011 New START Treaty remains the only arms control agreement in force between Moscow and Washington. However, it will expire next February, and negotiations to replace it are remaining deadlocked. Now the U.S. says it wants to extend the New START by less than 5 years and only by memorandum of intent rather than a binding treaty, according to Marshall Billingsley, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Arms Control. All right. Over in Belarus, pardon me, female protesters confront police as 100,000, it is claimed, people take to the streets of Belarus in the latest demo against re-elected President Lukashenko. Over in China, China surrounds Taiwan with military, calls the maneuver part of war games. Taiwan on Friday detected up to 18 Chinese military planes crossing the Formosa Strait dividing line and responded with the deployment of several fighters, an increase in tensions between Taipei and Beijing due to the visit to the island of a high U.S. official. In a statement posted to his Twitter account, the Taiwanese Minister of National Defense reported that several aircraft from the air forces of the People's Liberation Army had entered the island's air defense identification zone. Now, Taiwan is saying that they have a right to retaliate to these provocations. It looks like things are getting really, really hot over there. Okay, here is a story, this out of womenssystems.com here. And it's an article confirming arsonists are behind several of the devastating West Coast fires, according to authorities. In Oregon, Washington, and California, there have been multiple arrests and charges for arson in September so far. 3 men have been charged for arson in Oregon. 2 of the fires set have caused great devastation over many acres of forest and Oregonian homes. A lot of Californians moved to Oregon for affordable housing, only to lose their homes to the fires. ABC News reported that Michael Jared Bakela received 2 charges of arson, 15 counts of criminal mischief, and 14 counts of reckless endangering for a fire that was set September 8th in the Phoenix area of southern Oregon. Police believe the fire caused by Bakela compounded on the already burning Alameda fire, bringing the destruction of numerous homes. The News Tribune of Tacoma, Washington, reported the arrest and charge of Elias Newton Pendergrass, 44 years old, on September 1st for a fire near Mapleton, Oregon. The Hill reported yet another first-degree arson charge against Jason Moss, 44 years old, who allegedly started a fire in the woods near the Frisbee Golf Course in Dexter State Recreational Area. And the article goes on to list a lot more. So this claim that this is all part of the global warming and climate change was complete and utter nonsense here. All right, let's talk about the economic news. Rough day on the stock market. The Dow ended about 560 points down. It was down almost 1,000 at one point in the middle of the day, but there was a dead cat bounce that sort of rescued it. And again, because of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg vacancy at the Supreme Court, the economy has sort of been knocked down a few pegs in terms of the election year here. Bond volatility hits a new all-time low, ready for the next explosion. This is from Investment Watch blog. And they're blaming the stock market downturn on the coronavirus and the lack of a coronavirus stimulus plan coming out of Congress. But there has been a lot of scandal among global banks. HSBC allowed fraudsters to transfer millions of dollars around the world even after it had learned of the scam. Britain's biggest bank moved the money through its U.S. business to HSBC accounts in Hong Kong back in 2013 and 2014. Its role in the $80 million fraud is detailed in a leak of documents, banks' suspicious activity reports that have been called the FinCEN files. HSBC says it's always met its legal duties on reporting such activities. All righty, now getting on over to the TikTok deal. Trump wants to include funding for his white history curriculum, the 776 plan, in the TikTok purchase deal. With only they're still negotiating back. Apparently Walmart is now part of this TikTok deal, and they're talking something like $50 billion of that purchase price will go to Trump's White History Education Initiative because he's never going to get that money out of the House of Representatives. Trump is warning the U.S. could become Venezuela on steroids. He tells Mark Levin Biden doesn't know he's alive. With only a month and a half until the 2020 election, 43 days to be exact, Donald Trump gave an in-depth interview on Fox News Life, Liberty, and Levin, where he discussed the potential coronavirus vaccine, Joe Biden, mail-in voting, and the corporate media. All righty, now over in Manhattan, there's a place called Hudson Yards. It is a $25 billion shopping mall, and it is all but abandoned amid the New York City crisis, despite its luxury retailers reopening to customers. Hudson Yards, known as the most expensive real estate project in American history, lays all but abandoned amid the country's coronavirus pandemic. The $25 billion complex, located on Manhattan's West Side, was once touted as the most exciting new attraction in New York City. But just 18 months after the initial opening, it resembles a ghost town. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. Here we're talking about the economic news. Now, in the 12 months through February before the pandemic got going, those were supposedly good times when a government shouldn't have to borrow heavily, and yet the U.S. government added a breathtaking $1.4 trillion to its already gigantic debt. And then came the pandemic, bailouts, stimulus payments, and all the rest. And over the 6 months since then, the U.S. government added another $3.3 trillion to the U.S. gross national debt that now amounts to $26.8 trillion. It's a lot of numbers in there. The big question is, who bought that debt? Because it can't look like a really, really good investment, but somebody bought it. Somebody came up with the cash for that here. All righty. Now, more and more people are calling for Julian Assange's release. Lula, Rousseff, Morales, Zapatero, Corbyn, Correa, Paul, Galloway, Gravel, Varoufakis. They're all basically realizing that this attempt to punish Julian Assange for being a publisher represents a threat to a free press everywhere. Not just independent media, but even the corporate media realizes this is a threat. As Julian Assange fights U.S. extradition at the Old Bailey, over 100 eminent political figures, including 13 past and present heads of state, numerous ministers, members of parliaments, and diplomats have today denounced the illegality of the proceedings and appealed for Assange's immediate release. I agree with them on that one completely. Now, the politicians from 27 different countries and from across the political spectrum have joined 189 independent international lawyers, judges, legal academics, and lawyers associations by endorsing their open letter to the British government, warning that the U.S. extradition request and proceedings violate national and international laws, breach fair trial rights and other human rights, and threaten press freedom and democracy. Okay, now there's a story circulating around that Donald Trump offered Julian Assange a win-win deal to avoid extradition to the U.S. if he revealed the source of the hacked Democratic Party emails. This is a court heard that one. Jennifer Robinson, one of the lawyers representing Assange, said then Republican, then Congressman Dana Rohrabacher and Trump associate Charles Johnson presented themselves as acting as conduits for the president to tout an arrangement. They said Assange would be left alone to get on with his life if he revealed the DNC hacking source, which was of value to Mr. Trump. Well, we all know who that was. It was Seth Rich. Certainly wasn't the Russians. The metadata on the files indicated that. Now, I've avoided talking about Netflix film The Cuties, but it continues to make news. I'm afraid of the Banned in Boston effect, that if more people bash it, the audience is going to tune in to see what all the fuss is about. But apparently dozens of Republican members of Congress have signed on to a letter asking Attorney General William Barr to bring charges against Netflix for distributing Cuties, saying the movie is child pornography under U.S. law. Okay, and there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It is urgent that you do so to get Republic over this very rough patch that we're dealing with. And we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.